Modern medicine is built on the work of giants. But the thing nobody tells you is that many of those giants were black pioneers whose names were quietly pushed aside. They invented new surgeries and saved millions. One man even performed a miracle on a human heart in 1893. Now, their hidden stories are finally being told. 1. Onesimus. Imagine this. The year is 1721. You are in Boston, Massachusetts, and the city is in a total panic. A deadly disease, smallpox, is sweeping through the streets. It is a true monster. The sickness is fast, it's painful, and it leaves people scarred for life, if they even survive. People are fleeing the city. They are terrified. Everyone is looking for an answer, but the best doctors in town have nothing. Now, enter a famous preacher named Cotton Mather. He is one of the most powerful men in the city, but he has a secret. That secret is an enslaved man in his household, a man named Onesimus. We only know him by that one name. Onesimus was brought to America from Africa, and as he watches the panic, he tells Cotton Mather something amazing. He is not scared of this disease. Why? Because in his homeland, they already had a way to stop it. What many overlooked is that this was not a new problem in Africa. Onesimus explained a special procedure. He said you take a tiny bit of the sickness from a person who is already sick. Then you make a tiny cut in the skin of a healthy person and put the sickness inside. He even had a scar on his arm to prove he had it done. This small amount of the disease would make the person a little sick, but then their body would learn to fight it. After that, they would never get smallpox again. Cotton Mather was blown away. This was genius. It was a form of inoculation. He ran to tell the doctors and leaders of Boston about this amazing idea. But here's the kicker. They did not just reject the idea, they laughed at him. They were furious. They called it barbaric and heathen. They could not believe that a simple, enslaved man from Africa could know more than all the trained doctors of Boston. They published angry letters in the newspaper telling Mather to be quiet. But Mather and a brave doctor named Zabdiel Boylston decided to try it anyway. They started inoculating people. The results were staggering. The numbers do not lie. That year, about 6,000 people in Boston got smallpox the natural way. Of those, about 850 passed away. That is almost 1 in 7. But of the 242 people who trusted Onesimus's idea and got the inoculation, only 6 passed away. That is 1 in 40. The proof was right there. This idea, brought from Africa by an enslaved man, had saved the city. This very concept laid the groundwork for all modern vaccines. Yet for centuries, all the credit went to a man named Edward Jenner, who came along decades later in England. Onesimus, the man who handed America the key to stopping the plague, was almost completely erased. Onesimus's idea was pure genius, but it was a folk practice, not formal medicine. It would take another 100 years for the first black man to officially earn the title of doctor, and to do it, he would have to cross an entire ocean. 2. Dr. James McCoon Smith. Meet James McCoon Smith. He was a brilliant young man living in New York City in the 1820s. He was at the top of his class at the New York African Free School. He was a star student, and he had a huge dream. He wanted to become a doctor. He was smart enough, driven enough, and ready to work. But he had one big problem. The thing nobody tells you about that time is that no matter how smart you were, some doors were just locked. It was the 1830s. James applied to colleges in America. He applied to Columbia, his top choice, but every single one turned him down. The reason? His skin color. They would not allow a black man to attend medical school. To put it mildly, they were telling him his dream was impossible. But James McCoon Smith was not the kind of person to give up. If America would not teach him, he would find a country that would. He saved up his money. His teachers and supporters in New York helped him. And then he did something unbelievable. He got on a boat and sailed all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to Scotland. He had been accepted at the University of Glasgow, one of the best schools in the world, and he did not just scrape by. He shined. He soaked up all the knowledge he could. In 1837, he graduated with 3 degrees, including his medical doctorate. This made him the first black American in history to ever earn a medical degree. He returned to New York City a fully qualified doctor. He set up his medical practice on Howard Street and treated both black and white patients. But he did not stop there. He also opened the very first black-owned and operated pharmacy in the entire United States. He was a massive success. But here is what makes his story even more powerful. Dr. Smith did not just stay in his clinic. He was also a leading abolitionist, a close friend of Frederick Douglass. He used his scientific mind as a weapon. At the time, powerful men like Thomas Jefferson had written that black people were inferior in mind and body. Dr. Smith used his medical and statistical training to tear those arguments apart. He wrote brilliant essays and articles that proved, with science, the intelligence and resilience of his people. He was a giant in both medicine and civil rights. For decades, however, his name was just a whisper in the history books. Dr. Smith proved a black man could be a top doctor, but could a black doctor perform the most impossible surgery ever imagined? A surgery on a living, beating human heart? One man was about to find out. 3. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. Picture this. Chicago, 1893. It is a hot, sticky summer night. A man named James Cornish stumbles into Providence Hospital. He has been in a bad fight, a terrible brawl, and he has a deep wound in his chest. He is fading fast. He is bleeding inside, and everyone knows he does not have much time. The hospital he is at, Providence Hospital, is special. It is one of the very first hospitals in America that was founded by and for black people. It was a place where black doctors and nurses could work and train, and the doctor on call that night was the man who founded it, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams. Dr. Williams looked at the wound. It was bad. It was close to the heart. In 1893, this was a death sentence. The rule in medicine all over the world was, do not touch the heart. Opening a patient's chest was seen as a crazy, hopeless act. No surgeon dared to do it. But Dr. Williams knew James Cornish would pass away if he did nothing. He had to make a choice. Follow the rules and let the man go, or break the rules and try the impossible. He chose to break the rules. In a small, basic operating room with simple tools, Dr. Williams made the brave decision. He carefully opened the man's chest. He had to see what was wrong. What he found was shocking. The pericardium, which is the thin sac that holds the heart, had been torn. Dr. Williams, with steady hands, carefully stitched the tear in the sac. He did not stitch the heart itself, but the protective lining around it. He had successfully operated inside a man's chest cavity. This was one of the first, if not the first, successful open-heart surgeries ever recorded in the world. Everyone in the hospital held their breath. They waited. The next day, James Cornish was not only alive, he was sitting up in bed and talking. He made a full recovery. He walked out of that hospital 51 days later and went on to live for another 20 years. The news spread like wildfire. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams became famous. He was a hero. He had founded an interracial hospital and then performed a miracle. Yet for many years, his name was often left out of major medical textbooks when they talked about the history of heart surgery. His pioneering work was often just a footnote. Dr. Williams created a hospital where black nurses and doctors could train. But what about the first black woman to become a doctor? She would have to fight an even harder battle, and she would do it right in the smoke of the Civil War. 4. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler. In the 1800s, just being a woman was tough. There were so many rules about what you could and could not do. Being a black woman was even tougher. But trying to be a doctor as a black woman, most people in the world would have said that was completely impossible. But they never met Rebecca Lee. She was born free in Delaware in 1831 and was raised in Pennsylvania by her aunt. Her aunt was a helper in their community, the person everyone went to when they were sick. Rebecca watched her aunt care for people, and it sparked something in her. She knew that was her calling. She moved to Massachusetts and started working as a nurse. She was a great nurse, and she worked for 8 long years. But she knew she could do more. She wanted to be the one making the decisions, the one with the deep medical knowledge. She wanted to be a doctor. The problem was, in 1860, almost no medical schools would accept women, and none were known to accept black women. But Rebecca was brave. She got letters of recommendation from the doctors she worked for and applied to the New England Female Medical College. And believe it or not, she got in. This was a massive deal. She worked incredibly hard even as the Civil War raged across the country. Then, in 1864, she did it. She finished her studies and earned her degree. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler became the first black woman in the history of the United States to earn a medical doctorate. Think about that timing. 1864. The war was not even over. As soon as the war ended, where did she go? She moved south to Richmond, Virginia. She knew this was where she was needed most. She worked with the Freedmen's Bureau to give medical care to thousands of newly freed people who had nothing. They had no doctors, no clinics, no medicine. What many overlooked is the hate she faced. It was intense. White male doctors would mock her. They refused to work with her. Pharmacists in the city would refuse to fill the prescriptions she wrote for her patients. People would whisper that her MD was a bogus degree, that she was not a real doctor. But she never stopped. She saw women and children who were being turned away by everyone else. After her work in the South, she moved back to Boston and continued her practice. She later wrote a book called Book of Medical Discourses. It was one of the first medical books ever published by a Black author. It was full of advice for women on how to care for themselves and their children. After she passed away, her story was almost completely lost. For more than 100 years, no one even knew what she looked like. No photos, no drawings, nothing. It was not until 2020 that a single photograph of her was finally discovered in an old archive. A true pioneer, almost erased from her own story. Dr. Crumpler fought for the health of women and children, but what about a disease that attacks the mind? The next doctor worked side by side with the man who named Alzheimer's, but his name was nearly erased from the discovery. 5. Dr. Solomon Carter Fuller. When we hear the name Alzheimer's, we all think of one person, the German doctor, Alois Alzheimer. He is the man who first described the strange, forgetting sickness that robs people of their memories. But the thing nobody tells you is that there was a brilliant black doctor right there with him, doing the groundbreaking research, whose name was pushed to the side. His name was Dr. Solomon Carter Fuller. He was born in Liberia in West Africa. His grandparents had been enslaved in America and had bought their freedom and returned to Africa. But Solomon wanted to come to America to study. He came and graduated from medical school in the US. He was fascinated by the human brain. He wanted to understand how it worked and what happened when it broke down. In the early 1900s, he got an amazing opportunity. He was chosen to go to Germany and study at the Royal Psychiatric Hospital in Munich. And who was his boss? The one and only Dr. Alois Alzheimer. At that exact time, Dr. Alzheimer was studying the brains of people who had passed away from this strange new disease. Fuller jumped right into the research. He became the leading expert on the physical proof of the disease inside the brain. He was the one who studied the plaques and tangles, the gunk that gums up the brain of an Alzheimer's patient. He was one of the first to truly understand what the disease looked like. He became so important to the research that he was the one who translated much of Dr. Alzheimer's work into English. He brought these new ideas back to America. He came back to the US and became a top professor at Boston University School of Medicine. He was a pathologist, a doctor who studies diseases. He trained a whole new generation of doctors and became one of the first black psychiatrists in the country. But here is the kicker. While he was doing all this world-changing work, the school was treating him terribly. They paid him less than the new young white doctors he was training. For years, they refused to even give him the official title of professor. He was doing the work, but they would not give him the credit or the pay. He was a true pioneer of Alzheimer's research. Some historians today believe he understood the disease even better than Dr. Alzheimer did at the time. Yet for decades, he was just a footnote in the story. All the credit went to his European colleagues. It was not until the 1970s, long after he was gone, that the American Psychiatric Association and medical historians began to finally recognize his massive foundational contributions to understanding one of the world's most feared diseases. Dr. Fuller helped us understand the brain, but our next doctor's work saved the lives of millions by figuring out how to store blood. 6. Dr. Charles R. Drew. We take blood transfusions for granted. If you get in a bad accident, you go to the hospital, and they have blood ready for you. It seems simple, but it was not always that way. For a long time, blood was something you could not save. Someone had to figure out how to store it, and his name was Dr. Charles R. Drew. In the 1930s, if you collected blood, you could not store it for more than a couple of days. The whole blood, with all its parts, would go bad. This was a massive problem. Hospitals could not keep a blood bank. And with a new world war, World War II, starting in Europe, Leaders knew they would need a way to help wounded soldiers on the battlefield. Dr. Drew was a brilliant surgeon and researcher. He was studying at Columbia University, working on his doctorate, and he was focused on this one big problem: how to save blood. His big idea was a total game changer. He discovered that you did not need to store whole blood. Blood is made of different parts. His research showed that if you separated the parts, the liquid part, called plasma, was like magic. You could dry it, store it, and ship it. It lasted much longer than whole blood. And in an emergency, plasma could be given to any patient, no matter their blood type. This discovery was revolutionary. It meant you could finally create blood banks. Dr. Drew created and tested a system. He was put in charge of a program called Blood for Britain. This program collected thousands of donations of blood from Americans. They separated the plasma and shipped it overseas to help soldiers and civilians who were being hurt in the war. His system saved countless lives. He became a hero. Then America joined the war. Dr. Drew was put in charge of a new blood bank for the American military. But here is where his story takes a dark turn. Even as he was saving the world, he faced insane prejudice. The military gave him an order. They said the blood from black donors and the blood from white donors had to be kept separate. Dr. Drew, the man who was the world's top expert on blood, the man who invented the whole system, was furious. He knew this was total junk science. There is no difference. He argued against the rule. He called it a stupid and unscientific policy. It was a slap in the face. He was so disgusted by this rule that he resigned from his post. To put it mildly, his story has a tragic end. In 1950, at the age of just 45, Dr. Drew was in a terrible car accident in North Carolina. A terrible rumor spread for decades that he had bled out because a nearby white hospital refused to treat him. This rumor is not true. He was treated by white doctors who tried their best to save him, but his injuries were just too severe. The real, sad irony is that he lived and worked in a country so divided that the false story seemed believable to millions of people. Dr. Drew revolutionized saving blood, but what about saving something just as precious? A person's eyesight. The next pioneer invented a tool that changed how we see the world, and she had to fight every step of the way. 7. Dr. Patricia Bath. Imagine your vision growing cloudy. The world around you is slowly fading to white, like looking through a foggy window. This is what it is like to have cataracts. It is a condition that steals sight from millions of people, especially as they get older. For a long time, the surgery to fix it was risky and difficult. Then, Dr. Patricia Bath had a flash of genius. Dr. Bath was a brilliant eye doctor, an ophthalmologist. She was born in Harlem, New York. From a young age, she was a star scientist. In the 1970s, she was a doctor working in two places, at the prestigious Columbia University and at a clinic in Harlem. She started to notice something shocking. When she was at the clinic in Harlem, she saw that way more of her black patients were blind or had serious vision problems compared to her white patients. At the university clinic, it was not even close. She studied it and proved that the rate of blindness among black people was nearly double. She figured out why. It was not because of their biology. It was because they did not have access to eye care. They could not get to a doctor or afford treatment. She called this idea community ophthalmology, a new field she invented that focused on bringing eye care to the people who needed it most. But she did not stop there. She wanted to find a better way to treat cataracts. The old way of removing them was mechanical and a bit clumsy. Her big idea? Use a laser. She spent 5 long years in a lab working on her invention. She faced so much trouble. She said her research was stolen. People in the labs where she worked did not support her. It got so bad she had to take her work to Europe, to labs in Germany and France, to find a place that would let her finish her invention. Finally, in 1986, she did it. She invented the laser phaco probe. This amazing little device used a laser to quickly and gently dissolve the cataract. The doctor could then remove the softened cataract easily. The whole procedure was faster, way more accurate, and much less painful for the patient. When she finished her invention, Dr. Patricia Bath became the first black female doctor in the history of the world to receive a patent for a medical device. Her invention is now used all over the globe. It has given sight back to millions and millions of people. But for a long time, her name was not as famous as her amazing invention. She had to fight color issues and intimate humiliations her entire career. Aridati. All while creating a tool that literally changed how we see the world. Dr. Bath helped the world see. But our next doctor had to fight a war within a war just to be treated as a soldier and a healer. 8. Dr. Alexander Augusta. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, thousands of black men rushed to join the Union Army to fight for freedom. But what about black doctors? The Army needed surgeons, but it was not ready to accept a black man as one. That is, until they met Dr. Alexander Augusta. Augusta was born free in Virginia, just like Dr. James McCoon Smith. He dreamed of being a doctor, but no school in America would take him. So he saved his money and went to Canada. He got his MD from the University of Toronto and set up a very successful medical practice there. He was doing great, but when the Civil War started, he felt he had to do something. He wrote a letter straight to President Abraham Lincoln. He offered his skills as a surgeon to the Union Army. In 1863, the Army said yes. He was given a commission as a major. This was a huge, historic moment. Dr. Augusta became the first black physician to be an officer in the Union Army. In fact, he was the highest-ranking black officer in the entire military at the time. But what many overlooked is that the Army was not ready for him. The white officers were furious. They could not stand being outranked by a black man. He faced constant, terrible disrespect. The stories are shocking. One day, he was on a train in Washington, D.C., wearing his officer's uniform. He was told to leave the first-class car and ride in the dirty car at the back. When he refused, saying he was an officer, a group of men attacked him. He was a major in the United States Army, and he was being beaten by civilians for sitting in the wrong train car. Another time, a white junior officer refused to take orders from him, but Dr. Augusta did not back down. He reported the officer, and that officer was punished. He fought for his rank and his respect at every turn. Despite the hate, he served with honor. He was put in charge of a hospital for black soldiers. After the war, he was put in charge of the Freedmen's Hospital in Washington, D.C., which made him the first black man to run any hospital in the United States. He also became one of the first professors at the new Howard University Medical School, where he trained the next generation of black doctors. But his powerful military story and his personal fight against prejudice while wearing the uniform was buried in Army records for over a century. He was a pioneer who had to fight two battles at once, one for the Union and one for his own dignity. Dr. Augusta fought for respect inside the Army. Our next doctor had to fight a different kind of battle by inventing a tool to look inside the human body in a whole new way. 9. Dr. Leonidas Berry. We have all heard of someone getting a scope test. A doctor uses a long, thin tube with a camera on the end to look inside your stomach or your gut. It is a common procedure now, and it saves lives by finding problems early. But in the 1930s, this was like science fiction, and one black doctor became the master of it. His name was Dr. Leonidas Berry. He was a doctor in Chicago, and he was fascinated with the stomach. The field is called gastroenterology. At the time, the only way to see what was wrong in someone's stomach was to do a big, open operation. Dr. Berry learned how to use a brand new, early version of a scope. It was a flexible tube that he could guide down into a patient's stomach to look around. It was revolutionary, but Dr. Berry thought it could be better. So, he invented something. He created a new attachment for the scope. It was called the Eder-Berry gastroscope. This new tool was a game changer. It allowed him to not only see inside the stomach, but also to use a tiny little claw to take a small piece of tissue. This is called a biopsy. Why was this so important? Because now, for the first time, doctors could find out if a person had a serious problem, like stomach cancer, without having to do a major dangerous surgery. He could diagnose ulcers and other issues in minutes. He became one of the top experts in the whole world on this procedure. He performed it on thousands of patients and wrote the book on the topic. He taught the procedure to hundreds of other doctors, both black and white, who came from all over to learn from him. But here is the kicker. Even though Dr. Berry was a world-famous specialist, the hospitals in his own city of Chicago were segregated. He was a medical superstar, but he was not allowed to join the full-time staff at many of the big white hospitals. He could teach other doctors there, but he could not get a top job himself. Dr. Berry did not just accept this. He fought back. He led a team of doctors and lawyers for 12 years, pushing the hospitals to integrate. In 1963, his team won a huge victory, forcing a major Chicago hospital to end its segregation rules. He was a top medical inventor and a civil rights hero, but today, his name is rarely mentioned outside of his special medical field. Dr. Berry helped find hidden stomach issues, but our final doctor's work helped find a hidden deadly disease in newborn babies, saving thousands of lives before they even started. 10. Dr. Marilyn Hughes Gaston. Imagine a disease that secretly attacks a child's body from the very day they are born. A disease that was causing countless children to get terrible infections, have strokes, and even pass away before their 5th birthday. This was the terrible reality of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell is a condition that affects red blood cells. It mostly affects people of Black and African heritage. The cells, which are normally round, become hard and curved, like a sickle. These sticky cells get stuck and block blood flow, causing great pain and damage. In the 1980s, doctors were just starting to understand it. They knew that young children with sickle cell were getting awful infections, but they did not know how to stop it. Dr. Marilyn Hughes Gaston was a doctor working at the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH. She decided to lead a major nationwide study. Her idea was simple but brilliant. She wanted to see if giving babies with sickle cell a common everyday medicine, penicillin, could stop these terrible infections. Her team studied hundreds of children, and the results they found were so shocking, so clear, that they had to stop the study early. Why? Because it would have been unethical to continue. The children who were taking the daily medicine were 84% less likely to get the dangerous infections. Let that sink in. 84%. It was a miracle. This simple, cheap medicine was saving lives. Dr. Gaston's study was published in 1986, and it changed everything. Because of her work, the government launched a nationwide screening program. From that point on, every newborn baby in the United States was to be tested for sickle cell disease. This simple test, followed by the simple medicine, has saved an unknown number of lives. Children who might have passed away before they even started kindergarten were able to grow up, go to school, and live fuller lives. Dr. Gaston became a hero in the world of public health. She later became the director of a top bureau in the U.S. Department of Health. But despite her work, which literally changed the standard of care for every single baby born in America, her name is not one most people know. She is one of the most important and most overlooked figures in modern pediatrics. These 10 pioneers are just the beginning. History is filled with brilliant minds who were pushed into the shadows. Their stories were buried, but their legacies are all around us. In the vaccines we get, the surgeries that save us, and the medicines that protect our children.